See, I feel big data is important for our industry, considering that anything and everything that happens across the globe impacts our business, right? We are not in a very traditional ways of doing business where we can focus on only one part of the job and we only look at what's happening on that front and then what impacts does that have on our business. Today, what's happening on the oil price, what's happening in the economy, what's happening in the stock exchange, anything and everything will impact our business. There are various data points available for that, but totally depends on how you are using it. Within Intercontinental Hotels Group, we do look at the traditional data sources, which is all of our internal data sources, all the inward looking data sources, what is there on the books, what is my pace versus last year, the traditional data sources. But we try and go a step beyond that. So we try and look at what's, for example, the airline pace. So there are tools available today that tell you what's the volume of human traffic coming into a gateway city. And by looking at what's happening from a pace perspective in terms of how many visitors are coming into Singapore, or how many airline seats have been sold on a given day versus last year, same time, you can actually try and get a good feeler of what's the pace, not just of your hotel, but what is that pace in respect to what's happening in the market or what's going to happen in the market. So that gives you a good perspective. Then obviously there are a further third-party data sources available around what's the pace on GDS, for example, how's your future demand looking on the GDS front. So those are again some of the data sources that we evaluate. Now, I also do see a lot of noise around rate parity, and as an organization we have put in a lot of focus in the last 1.5 years by looking at what's the data around rate parity. It might not really help me to plan my immediate tactical moves, but it still gives me a good handle of my long-term strategy. What kind of channel mix I need to look at, what kind of segment mix I need to look at. Should I go for static pricing for my wholesale accounts vis-a-vis dynamic pricing? So it gives me a good perspective of those particular areas. Then I feel apart from that, we also look at a lot of social media noise, again, a lot of data around it, how well you are using it. And then there are things to refer to, for example, the development pipeline. Again, if you look at what's happening today, you're all good with all the data points that you're looking at. But if you're looking at planning your long-term strategy, you need to know what brands are coming up in your market, how many rooms are opening up in that market. So again, gives you a good perspective of how should you plan your long-term strategy. We also look at the brand health, for example. Now we have brands across different market classes, from mid-scale to upper upscale luxury market class. So it's important for us to understand what is the consumer thinking about my brand. So we do again a lot of independent surveys around getting that brand health data, and then we try and evaluate, is my positioning right and in line with the guest expectation. Now, on a daily basis, a revenue manager might not be looking at it, but again, these are some of the different data sources that you might want to look at from time and again, and it will help you to plan your medium to long-term strategy in a very nice way. From an analytical analytical background, we do get a lot of requests for new data. We get a lot of requests for new analysis, and the questions we really ask every time to those stakeholders is, what is the problem, what is the objective that you're trying to solve for, and what's the call to action that you will take once we will present you the data. I'll give you a classic example. Like for last year, in fact in late 2014, we started analyzing the drop in on oil prices, right? That was a time when the oil price started moving down from a $100 plus to a double digit. We started doing that analysis. Now, it did give us a good perspective, and there was a reason behind it. Why? Because I look after Asia, Middle East and Africa. We have a heavy exposure of our luxury hotels and upper upclass hotels in the Middle East. So we are dependent on whatever happens in Middle East will impact our overall AMEA revenues. Now, when we did that research or that analysis internally, we went on to the second call to action, which was to then analyze how many of my global accounts, for example, have exposure to the energy sector, because that would give me a clear indicator that in late 2014, how many accounts might drop their business or volumes in 2015 and 2016, right? So we looked at one analysis, but we had a call to action, and therefore we kind of joined that analysis into what's the output for us. So it kind of helped us to put things in perspective. If you are the owner of that data, I would really ask that question in terms of what data set and data sources are we talking about, because within a lot of the functions, right, for example, loyalty or marketing or the commercial side of it, the definition of data sources might be different. So it's important for the analytics person to actually ask that question in terms of how exactly those data sources will be utilized, what's the definition around that. And then we also try and analyze what's the timeline in terms of the analysis when it's required, right? If you're looking for analysis to be given in a month's time, what is the data source that I'm looking at? So again, to give you an example, if I'm analyzing social media data, now the social media data is a very fast data, right? It can come in and it can go out. By the time you analyze it and by the time you prepare your report, that data might not be relevant. So it totally depends on what's the data set. Is that data changing by the minute, by the second, by hour, by month? I am a great fan of big data. I love big data, but at the same time, I think from a hotel's perspective, you should be focusing more on the clean data, because when you move on to a big data journey at the property level or in a hotel organization level, there is a 100% chance that you will get a lot of noise in the data. So the more focus you have on the cleanest data possible, and you are very clear on the objective of why you are moving towards the big data, will hold the key on how you really go about putting up a strategy for your organization. First answer is strategy. You need to have a plan around it. You need to have a strategy around it. Secondly, everyone wants the data. Nobody wants to own the data. So at the property level, within the organization, make sure that you have a dedicated owner for the data. Once you have those pieces in place, the next couple of things that you really need to look at is have a schedule for cleaning the data, right? The data will get dirty. There will be noise that will come into data eventually. So at the property level, or again above property, you need to ensure that there is a schedule around it and not that you are doing firefighting most of the time. The key area around that part is have an SOP. If you really put in your standard operating procedures, if you have your nice drafted SOP that talks not just to the data points, but also to the overall data universe, also talks to the dashboards that you've created, I think that works very well for the organization. And especially because within our industry, we have a lot of attrition, right? So you have new people coming in, old people going out. And when a new person comes in and starts working on a new dashboard or an old dashboard, what data he uses and what's the definition that he or she will perceive of one data point is anybody's guess. So till the time it's written in stone that this is what it is, this is how it needs to be mapped, I think that's the way forward for any organization to really look at.